2, 1. Madam Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, the road to hell is paved with good intention. And we on side opposition believe that the end does not justify the means. Yes, in hindsight, the gods were right, but we think this perpetuates a self-fulfilling prophecy when they broke the law, breached Fenrir's consent, and abused their power and authority, quite similar to what side Prime Minister wants to do when he's going to preemptively crack down on the things that people do prior to them doing it just because of, I don't know, vibes. But we think the contradiction in the case of the first speaker is that if they characterize crime to be at the heat of the moment, which are like heinous crimes because you get pissed and want to kill someone, then the question I have is, how is this vibe check or study going to work if you concede that at the heat of the moment they're gonna do it? But if there are cases along the lines of, wait, Joseph, no, a lot of other crimes are premeditated, there's planning. We think that could be true, but they have a burden to explain why in all instances they should crack down on people's liberty and dignity. Sounds a lot like the Gestapo to me and all these efforts of secret police to crack down on people just because they think they're an enemy of the state that is going to be harmful. We on side opposition believe in a couple of things. Number one, this is a value judgment debate, not about preventive action being good or bad, or whether we should do it or not, but the extent of that. Meaning, the nuance in this debate and the burden push we have very early on to side government is why it should be always justified. We on side opposition believe that there are some gray areas, and when we tell you that when we're unsure, when in doubt, don't. We believe that these things are the literal difference between fucking wrecking someone's entire dignity, entire life, when you throw them behind bars and label them an enemy of the state and rob them of their dignity and capacities. Number two, we think that the pursuit of the particular good of a public safety, it's nice, right? But it's not an overriding good or value. We think that in instances where it infringes on your rights and liberties some of the time, does not justify you doing that all of the time. They have to be able to solve that tension in their case. Thirdly, and very clearly, what is our comparative or counterfactual? We're completely fine with doing preventive action still, but not all of the time. In fact, we skew this to be reactionary because we understand that we need to give people the benefit of the doubt and not play judge, jury, and executioner. That's precisely why in status quo, we don't do shit like bombing enemy territories and encampments just because of vibes, or arresting opposition leaders just because we think that, oh, they might do something in the future, so let's throw them behind bars, etc. Just like what we saw in Georgia, Russia, North Korea, and many instances in the Middle East where these authoritarian regimes infringe and curtail democratic processes because they think it's good. What is my argument, right? Responses will be integrated. My argument is that everything that happens on their side is essentially an affront to the criminal justice system, and that is particularly harmful. Why is that? First level of analysis, looking at deterrence, because that seems to motivate side proposition. We tell you that it might be effective in a utilitarian metric, but we think ultimately there is no due process. And this is literally hinged on arbitrary metrics like vibes or what they did as a kid. And you start prognosticating and making dangerous assumptions that some fucking weird kid ate a bird or killed a frog, and then, oh my gosh, they're gonna be a serial killer. I get what you're trying to say, right? It may be valid. But in instances which I raised in my POI, which is majority cases where it's not, because they're just weird or it's a one-off kind of thing, because you yourself characterize it to be so heat of the moment, it becomes virtually impossible to be able to know and dictate why these should be the cases of people doing it. And we tell you that, similar to the info slide, if you judge Fenrir based on the prophecy of the oracle or a one-sided witness or one-sided evidence, you curtail due process. Why is that bad? It's bad because it leads to a confirmation bias and you start locking in only on that reality. It's like reverse Doctor Strange, right? Instead of looking at all of the other instances where it might not happen, you fucking lock in on the world where it does. And that becomes a slippery slope for you to be able to certain capacities. Second layer of analysis, the idea of proportionality. This is the farthest thing from proportional, precisely because you already do it even before they actually commit the crime, and we support the alternative of not doing that. The harm here is that you justify and radicalize what they do in instances where you think they might do it. So, in hindsight, yeah, you were able to lock up Fenrir, but locking him up and stripping him of his dignity and capacity justified his intention to later on, at the time of Ragnarok, slay Odin and get revenge on the very gods who locked him behind bars. Sure, I'll take your POI.
Dynasty.
Because we have laws and we have dignity for a reason. Following your logic, if public safety was an overriding good all of the time, then we should bomb the shit out of all war-torn areas, we should execute all dictators, we should hold anyone who is part of an opposition camp against their will and silence these particular people. We need to believe in due process. I agree with you that there are instances where it should be done, but we think it shouldn't be done all of the time, precisely where there is a gray area or shroud of uncertainty, no matter how small. We need to be able to give benefit of the doubt and not just assume people are guilty before they are actually charged to do so. We believe in a process. Third and lastly, this idea of retribution. There's literally no retribution because you curtailed that at the expense of pure deterrence. We think that the problem here is that you lock in too hard and eventually think that these people are unsavable. Imagine if you're a kid and you did some weird stuff, and then now as an adolescent, you're being sent in this camp to be able to brainwash you and tell you that it's wrong. It's ultimately a crappy consumer experience. It's super sketchy. The problem with side proposition is that they wear rose-tinted glasses, and the point in which you make decisions based on that, everything you deem to be true is seen as a red flag, and that ultimately harms the capacity of people to truly be rational, harms the capacity of people to truly understand what's happening. So, if you want to uphold the criminal justice system and you want to give people a fair chance, which actually ironically prevents them from doing crime as opposed to prematurely locking in, we think the motion has to fall. We are very proud to stand on side opposition.